Hooray. I'm so happy to see you, Doc Neal. You've been a mentor and a friend of mine for a long time. We are going to jump right in. Um, I've I started this conversation with you a while ago, but I want to share it with other coaches and other people because I think it's a really important inflection point in where we are as coaches and how we're using tech. And you were on the forefront of that. So this is meant to be kind of educational for coaches and I guess golfers if they are keen to learn. So let me start with just a big picture. My sense is there are on the order of say 30 plus AI driven 3D motion capture companies globally. Maybe a dozen can claim to do golf biomechanics at a somewhat serious level or serious level. And the more and more systems are claiming to do AI research or work. And I know I'm not the only coach who feels unsure about how to evaluate them. So today I want to see if you could walk us through how you think coaches should be vetting these tools, maybe where to be skeptical, where to be excited about, and how to decide, what's trustworthy or not enough to use with players. So I've got a set of questions, but basically looking to get your perspective on what questions we as coaches can be asking before we buy stuff and what kind of limitations should we trust from these systems.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice point to start with, and then I think that the discussion can kind of evolve a trail as we go through it. But I think that like most things in life, if something sounds unbelievable, it probably is. So if you as I said in a presentation at the proponent group, I mean, look, everyone would love to have a 3D motion capture system that has embedded AI that you can just run off your phone. You don't even need to put it on a tripod. You just hold it up there. It does everything for you, and it goes, "Hey, this is what you need to work on in your golf swing." I mean, and there'll be some companies that almost claim to do that. Not quite, but almost. And you go, well, is that believable? No, it's definitely not believable, especially when you consider what's necessary to get accurate information on 3D. And so, uh, as a user of 3D, and my advice to coaches would be then tread warily, but understand the strengths and weaknesses of all of the systems that you would look at. There is nothing that's perfect. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got the very expensive systems. Elva would be one of them, where you get accurate 3D without markers, but right now you can only use it indoors. It's a fixed camera system, so you can't just take it out and have it running on the range if that's where you're going to do your next lesson. It's like, very specific location. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum are the ones like Sportsbox that you hold a video camera, your phone up in front of the golfer, and it'll give you some data on what that person did. And the differences between these two systems is remarkable in terms of accuracy and the ease of use and I would say the other thing that kind of, and one could be one end of the spectrum and it could be the other end of the spectrum. So accuracy and cost is high for some systems, it's lower at other systems, but accuracy is obviously compromised in order to do that. And then it's like how quickly can you get the information as well? And so as a coach, you know how important that almost immediate feedback is to you as a coach and to have the student in front of you know, oh, yeah, I've got accurate information on which I can base the next step in the learning process.
So let me ask you this right before you go in. If a coach asks, and this is pretty basic, but I think a lot of us want to know the answer to, how does the system actually turn video into joint angles and numbers? Like, what are the steps you'd want them to understand in simple terms?
Um, okay, so I think what we see through our eyes. So we have binocular vision, right? And we have two streams of basically video coming into our eyes. It's not anything like video, but just for the analogy, it works. And from that, our brain is able to process this information and create a three-dimensional world. So that's the very minimum requirement to take a planar image, a photograph, a video stream, which is just a collection of still images. The very minimum is that you need two views to reconstruct the three-dimensional world.
So, two cameras, you're saying?
Yeah, that's the absolute minimum.
Mhm.
And then the other requirement is that at every point in time, every object that you are interested in needs to be visible in both cameras.
So, if someone's making a golf swing and their arm is obscured behind the head, simple terms, you need another
You,
camera.
yeah, you would need probably three, and then, when you actually look at the three-dimensional photogrammetric studies, they'll say probably a minimum of 6 or 8 cameras to get accurate information.
So, is this where AI comes in, where AI can say, I can just make a guess, I kind of know where it's going to be? And is that where the AI systems are claiming that they are accurate?
Yeah, that's what they'll do. So it's the very best and worst of AI. It will give you an answer.
Mhm.
Like if you go to
Even if it's wrong.
Chat, GPT, or Grok and you ask a question,
Mm.
it'll come back with an answer. And then you have to decide if that answer is
Hmm.
correct or partially correct or incorrect. And that requires substantial knowledge to be able to sift through that. So the strength of AI is it'll give you an answer. The weakness is that it'll give you an answer under any circumstances. So if it loses track of where the hands are or where the club might be or where your eyes are pointing and things like that, then um, it'll say, oh, well, based on historical data, I think that this is where it will be. And that's all that AI is doing. So these AI models or neural networks are trained on millions and millions of images of humans um, in various poses, most of them not in a rotational pose. Most of it is, you know, like walking or face on, things like that. So it gets very good at recognizing where the shoulder joints and elbow joints are and so forth in a walking person um, or someone sitting in front of you. But it's not very good when you start rotating away from the camera. And so that's again one of the biggest weaknesses of these systems. And let me give you some idea of how good and bad they are. So a single camera system looking face on at a golfer can probably get the sways and the lifts reasonably accurately. So probably within an inch.
Face on.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be awful on the thrusts.
Mm.
So the depth is
Forward
not,
back.
yeah. You can get some information based on the fact that as an object gets closer to the lens of the camera, it gets bigger, right? Or further away, it's smaller. So if you have some a priori knowledge about the size of objects, and then you can get some information on the depth, but it's not very accurate. And so the sways and lifts will be pretty good. The rotations will be awful. And then
Will
when I
this,
say awful,
yeah.
like at different points during the swing, they might be 30 to 40 degrees off.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
significant. Not, I don't want to change tracks, but I want to ask quickly, is there AI engines grow with more data, there's more information, right? And arguably it could be better. Are different systems using different AI engines? How do the engines play a part and the time component and the user
Yeah.
component?
So the simple answer to the question is I don't know what every AI application is using. So there are many or a few open source pose estimation stuff that's available through Google or some of the Microsoft, some of the big companies provide that. And you can grab the open source and start using it. And those are the ones that I was talking about. They've been trained on millions of images, but typically not golf.
Mm-hmm.
So what, as an example at Elva, we've done is we've taken that basic model and then begun to train it for golf. So that training a neural network means giving it the images, like the video images, or perhaps the three-dimensional estimates of joint centers and so forth, and telling it based on empirical data, this is actually where the shoulder joint is. This is where your nose is. This is where the right elbow is. Um, and then it starts to say, okay, if I see this, then I can estimate better where those different points are. And so if you do this for thousands and thousands of golf swings, and you need multiple swings, minimum 50,000, absolute minimum, that you train your neural networks on, then you can start to get pretty good estimates based on the neural networks that you do. And the neural networks will learn that if I see this, I expect that. Boom, boom, boom. It's not measurement exactly the way you would with a sensor-based system, but it's still pretty good.
So if a coach is evaluating a system, one of the systems that are out there, what are some questions that they should always be asking about accuracy and validation?
Um, okay, so I would actually ask the coach the question, what do you want this 3D for?
Mm.
Is it just to make you look good as a coach? You know, to, oh, look, I've got the latest technology, I must be good.
Mhm.
Or is it um, that you want to have the student have a little bit of a wow effect because this avatar is available? And I'm not saying that those are bad reasons, because it's nice to have something that motivates your student. And if this is some new tech that gets them excited about practicing and doing things better, then it's valuable. I'm not being the naysayer here that, oh, you shouldn't have this unless it's accurate. Not at all. There are different um, value propositions for using a 3D system. If, on the other hand, you're looking for accurate technical information, then you have to ask the questions about, well, show me some validation studies on this system, compare it to a Vicon system or an electromagnetic system, and how accurate are the measurements.
Mhm.
And and I can assure you that TPI, Greg Rose, has done a lot of these evaluations, and the the very best markerless systems um, are at best about plus or minus 20 degrees for pelvis rotation and upper torso rotation, except Elva is now down to about plus or minus 7 degrees. So it's a big improvement. And th things get better as the neural networks are trained. But those are expensive systems. So there's unlikely that a coach by him or herself set up in a studio is going to have access to one of those systems. So then you go, what are the other choices after that? Um, Things like maybe Parallax or Sportsbox AI, Motion to Coach, all purporting to give you 3D data based on a single or bi-camera system.
Hmm.
And then the next question is how quickly do you get the information back? Is it going to be useful in a lesson, or is it just a nice effect that you can send some swing data to your student after the lesson? So
Right.
you do your normal coaching, you take some videos. Oh, here's your three-dimensional data. Maybe we can compare next lesson, something like that. So
As opposed
the
to
use
within the
cases,
lesson.
yeah, if you want it in the lesson, then I don't know. I don't know what the turnaround for Sportsbox AI is right now. But I know it's all of the computing's done in the cloud. So there's you got to get it up to the cloud, do the computing, and then get it back down again. So it's not going to be particularly fast.
Mm.
Not like when you look at a video on a computer, which is qualitative analysis, I know, but you can capture a swing and it'll be there by the time that the person's kind of turned around and is looking ready to, oh, how did I go on that swing?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and you draw some lines, or you might even have the lines pre-drawn, so you can say, oh,
Yeah.
did your pelvis sway then? Did you lift your head? Whatever it might be. So,
Here's a question you may not be able to answer, but maybe you could, I don't know, infer one. What kinds of things would you expect a vendor to say if they're kind of avoiding the accuracy question, or they're making allusions to accuracy, or they're creating accuracy in their mind?
yeah, I don't know because I'd just be honest with people. If they ask me what the accuracy is, this is what it is.
Mm.
Compare, and then we have data to show them that this system is good here. The problem is that most of the companies don't want to publish their accuracy data because they know it's not very good on some things. On some things it's fine,
Mhm.
but and that's probably what they would end up doing if they were a bit scared. They'll say, "Well, look at the sways here and thrusts compared to, AMM or GBD or Vicon or whatever system. Oh yeah, and then it looks good." And they wouldn't highlight, I don't imagine, the ones that they do poorly.
Right. So a practical check that we could do on the range in a few minutes to see if a system's giving would be something with rotation or with thrust.
Yeah, yeah, rotations are the big thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what that would probably require a priori is if you were the client
Mm.
swinging the club and they're doing the demo, is you would have to know what your body rotations were when you were measured on an accurate system.
Right.
So, I mean, look, here's an example, and it's not the best advertising for Elva either, but I know I've measured this Epson tour plane many, many times on my 3D system. And at impact, she's the most open I've ever seen. So typically between 80 and 85 degrees open with the pelvis, like ridiculously open. Yeah.
Like Jim Furyk open.
Yep. Yeah. Insane. And I measured her on Elva just 2 days ago, and it says, oh, 40 degrees open, which is open, but nowhere near as much.
Right.
And
Your
so
alarm bells
what
aren't going off.
that's right, yeah. What that's saying to me is our neural networks have never seen anything quite like this before. So they just suck it back to the average.
Mm.
So 80 is not possible. So, oh, look, I'll just fill in the gaps here and say, look, it can't be that. It needs to be high, but this is high for us. And then, so that's an example of an impact rotation of the pelvis. And look, as you probably know, Trill, doing the markerless capture accurately for the torso and pelvis is extraordinarily difficult because where do they stop and start?
Yeah.
Like, is it here? Is it here? Is it further down? You can't see that, but
And Elva,
uh,
you start at setup.
yeah, yeah. We just run through the whole swing and generate data for the every frame that's captured throughout the swing. But I mean, all of the systems would do that as well. But what's really hard is knowing uh, um, what you're measuring.
Yeah.
So things like picking out the shoulder joints is not that difficult, and picking out the elbow joints is not that difficult. But measuring this movement, you might think, oh, if the arm's oriented this way, that's easy. But what happens if it's oriented this way?
Hmm.
And that's the challenge for the markerless systems as well. Getting these small rotations at the wrist. There's no system that does that very well at the moment.
Even
If
even with three cameras, that still presents problems.
Oh yeah, huge. Yeah.
Hmm.
And here's an example, Trill. So if you're looking to get wrist joint movements, then you need 3 points to be able to identify it on the hand and then some on the forearm. So let's say the hand, and you're looking at the hand. Let's call it the lead hand of the golfer, but you're capturing an image that's the necessarily big enough to be able to easily see the driver head throughout the entire swing. So it's a huge volume, right? You might need a volume that's depth 2 yards, height probably 3 yards, and width at least 2 yards, probably three. So that's a massive volume, and then you're going to try to measure something that's just a few inches across. Just super difficult to do.
Hmm.
So um, to get back to the question then is
But I think what you're really saying is that there are some 3D metrics that are better and easier to measure than others. They're not all the
yes,
same.
not all the same now. So but if you can't, for example, get accurate information on where the hip joints are, then you're going to get poor information on the um, not just the rotations, but also the sway, thrust, and lift of the pelvis.
So if a female's wearing a skirt, to make this really practical, does that
Yep.
present more problems than pants?
Yes. If you have your hair out
Right.
versus tucked up under a cap, much more difficult. So the image that the camera sees of you right now,
Mhm.
um, as you move, it would be difficult to know, is this your hair or your face?
Hmm.
And if any obstructions of the head come through your hair, then it's difficult. Where does the head stop and so forth? So things like that. Loose fitting clothing. If you put a big jacket on that's loose fitting and then tight clothes, it could be the same swing. You'll get different results just because that's a limitation of the markerless technology. It's trying to find these places, and when you have um, I guess noise there, if I can call it clothing noise, then it makes it more difficult.
So what's wild to me is that 3D in golf is a learn there's a learning curve there. Now 3D with AI being able to piece out noise and just problems measuring makes it a lot harder than something
Yeah,
that already was
yeah,
pretty hard.
yeah. And so I think that in some ways that's why it's been a little easier for companies to sell to the golf coaches because they purport to provide you with a very simple way of getting into 3D without necessarily needing all of the knowledge required to run a sensor-based system or a marker-based system. So they'll sell that dream, um, and it definitely makes it easy. Trill, you've had a K-vest at one time.
I still have it.
Um, yeah, so you understand that sometimes the sensors don't work as well as they should.
Yeah.
It's sometimes difficult to get the sensors on and functioning properly. And, there are some challenges with putting markers or sensors on a golfer. And you learn quickly that, you know, you're going to avoid embarrassment in front of a client by not using the system rather than risking using it. So that the camera-based systems obviate that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about it. You just make sure that the camera's seeing what the golfer's doing, and you're good to go.
Right. I was presented with a medical system a few years ago, and it was measuring joint loads and force. And the person presenting it was not a golf pro, but thought, wow, you could use this for golf. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Joint loads and force using markerless with one camera. Tell me about the problems with that.
Oh, wow. I mean,
And
the,
this was in the physical therapy space, but the person presented it was a golfer and thought, wow, you could translate this over to golf.
yeah. Okay. So predicting joint loads from kinematic data is super, super challenging. And if you don't have accurate displacement data, so both orientation and position of the joints and the segments, then I'm going to call that person's bluff out
Hmm.
because there's just no way. I mean, I've done it at university. It requires that at one end, if you've got any external contact with the world, which for golf will be at your feet
Yeah.
and holding onto a club, right? Then you need to know what the forces are there, or you can't predict what the joint loads would be. And then in golf, what makes it even more difficult is that you have two hands on a club, and you don't know how much force goes through your left versus your right hand. So yeah, you can make some assumptions like Sasha does in his modeling work, and then you can get to the elbow and shoulder joints. If you have a force plate and the center of pressure measurements from the ground, then you can know where the forces are being applied at the feet and work your way back up. But remember, you're going to take the displacement and orientation data, double differentiate them, which magnifies the errors tremendously.
And the amount of measuring that you need to do.
Yep. So I'd say
Not yet.
not yet. No.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
And and I don't know really what that's going to help you do with the client anyway.
Right.
I mean, I can understand it from a therapy perspective. If someone has got an osteoarthritic joint and you're wanting to look at the loads that they're putting through there
Yeah.
versus,
I broke my
then you
ankle.
go,
I'd
yeah,
love to see if I'm favoring it without realizing it.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So, and in clinical situations, you can probably do that and just limit it to a couple of joints
Right.
that are important for stability or balance, walking, something
Yeah.
like that. And you go, yeah, this is a really good application of that technology.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the right one for golf.
It this reminds me, this is tangential, but it reminds me of a lot of the movement science and motor learning studies that are done on kind of reach and grab tasks,
Yeah.
which is just so simple on the taxonomy of complex, and the golf swing
Yeah.
is just off the charts complex. So
Yes.
it's sometimes making a huge jump to try to apply some of the research to a golf swing, right,
Hmm.
without building up to it with other research.
Yeah. Totally agree, Trill. So, yeah.
This has been so helpful and so informative, and it's really just scratching the surface on answering, I guess, the questions without getting a full biomechanics degree.
Yeah.
But Doc, I really appreciate that you've had 40 plus years. When did you do your dissertation? Just 40 years ago.
I don't know if
Kinematics
I should be
with
telling you
springs.
this, Trill. It was 1982.
That is awesome. But that's just to say that your knowledge of biomechanics as applied to golf is deep and deep, and you're one of the world's foremost experts in golf biomechanics, and then you're using AI on top of it. So I think there are only a few of you that could have this conversation with the amount of real knowledge. So I appreciate you taking the time, Doc.
No problem at all, Trill. I hope that this is valuable to whomever listens to the stacks, stub stack, or whatever you call it.
Yeah. My
And
Substack's called The Short Grass. So if you're gonna read the text around it, I'll have a lot more in the text. The Short Grass Finance Substack.
Okay, and then if people do want some clarification, then Trill, I'm happy to help out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks, Doc. I really appreciate you.
No problem at all, Trill. You have a good day.
Thank you.